Hi, and welcome to the Rebel Ballerina Show. I am your host, of course, Lisa Loree, the Rebel Ballerina. And yeah, it's that Christmas time of year. I've got some fun festive earrings on and red. That's a typical Christmas color. And enjoying though the gorgeous weather we're having currently here in Southern California, but it looks like Christmas Day we're gonna have rain. But that's okay. Right now, it's incredibly wonderful. So I'll take it. And just getting into the holiday stuff, there's all kinds of things going on, crazy busy lives. I just spent some time baking Christmas cookies and making fudge. It's a thing I like to do every year and give away as gifts. And so far, I haven't had anyone complain. So I just keep doing it. And I've had some good feedback on the stuff I make. One is a really fun sugar cookie recipe that is from a dear, dear friend of mine. She used to babysit me when I was 3 years old, 3 and 4. I used to go to her house when my mom was substitute teaching, and I would spend time with her kids, and I just kept that relationship all through adulthood and till she finally passed, which is sad. Kind of weird, when that happens, even though logically it makes sense because of age and that sort of thing. But this is her recipe that she shared, oh, I don't know how many decades ago, really. And it is a keeper. It's super simple and it's like shortbread cookies, sugary shortbread cookies. So they're not the formed kind with the frosting and all that. I used to do that too, and that's just so much work. I was like, forget it. But I used to do that when my kids were little. Now it's just these. This recipe is actually called Danish sugar cookies, but they do um, taste a lot like shortbread. Now, here's the thing. I was just talking about the glycemic hit of Thanksgiving, and it was pretty severe watching the literal numbers on my phone because there's an app that attaches to the monitor that we put on the back of our arm. And we can see exactly what's going on the whole entire time. We can see, and it's pretty accurate. It might not be as accurate as if we were sticking blood every 5 minutes, because no one wants to do that. But it gives a pretty good idea of what is going on in the body and with the sugar intake and what that does and the spikes and how fast or not it takes for that blood sugar to come down to a reasonable level, or at least a starting level. So it was a really eye-opening experience, and I knew going into it that I wanted to try to reduce that glycemic hit as much as I could. And so I used monk fruit in my pies. So the filling for my wherever it called for sugar, like for my apple pie and the pumpkin pie, wherever it came to like a measurement of regular sugar, I used monk fruit instead. And the cool thing is you can use it just straight across. You don't have to recalculate whatever measurement. It's just one for one. So that's super nice. Well, now I'm, baking sugar cookies. So it's like, well, let's see how the monk fruit does with this. And I'll tell you what, it was pretty amazing. It was really amazing, actually. And again, I got to measure it just straight away, straight across. Although there are two different monk fruits that I used because these are granular. One has allulose, and the other one has, oh geez, how do I pronounce this again? Erythritol, I think, is the the name. And that one actually does pretty well with the baking. However, it was recommended to use a little bit of allulose as well. So the original recipe calls for 10 tablespoons of sugar to go into the cookie dough. So I play around with it. I played with 7 tablespoons of the one with erythritol and 3 with the allulose, and then I ended up doing like 9 and 1, and it turned out better that way. It was a tiny bit spongy with more allulose, just so you know. Just so you know. But I highly recommend it. The taste was just the same as if I had used sugar. And then for the fudge is tricky. I thought that I could find unsweetened condensed milk because that's what I that's what the recipe calls for is sweetened condensed milk, but I didn't want that sugar sweet. But before I get into what I did for the fudge, let me just throw it out there again, my ebook. Take a look at my ebook because what could possibly be um, a thing going on in your life that, we have a new year coming up. This would be a good time to try to do something. There's, resolutions, blah, blah, blah. People don't normally stick with that very easily. Maybe after the first month, it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Gym memberships go skyrocketing in January and then it all falls off. People stop coming by February, March. So there's something to tackle in and of itself. But if you really want change in your life, then you kind of have to change stuff. I know that's just so simplistic, but it is challenging. But it is simplistic and it makes sense. If you want something to change, if you want it to be better, then you got to change it, right? Just like these recipes, I had to change the recipes to fit where I am right now and what I've learned and what my body actually needs. So here's a clue. Our bodies do not need sugar, especially in the excessive amounts that it's being put out to us these days. We've never needed this much sugar. Our bodies were not intended to have this much sugar. That's exactly why we now have an epidemic of diabetes and chronic diseases because of too much sugar. So therefore, I needed to change something, right? Otherwise, we're just going to have the same glycemic hits, and poor Jimmy's feet are going to seize up on him and, eventually end up having to be in a wheelchair or definitely have his quality of life tremendously diminished if we don't do something about it, right? So that's what we've been doing over the years, actively making changes. And now this is one where I can tell you I'm so happy to report that it's an easy change with really great results. So monk fruit was like a hidden treasure for all of these years. I hadn't heard of monk fruit until just a couple of months ago. I'm like, but it's been around for a long time. Why haven't we heard about monk fruit? Hmm. Could it be that the sugar industry might not want us to know about monk fruit because then we would eat something actually healthy that still provides the sweetness that we want? Just a thought. Anyway, I used it for the cookies. Now on to the fudge. There is no such thing as unsweetened condensed milk. I searched high and low, and it doesn't exist. So I had to kind of make my own. And I used heavy cream, A2 heavy cream. That's a whole nother issue is dairy. And if you are having issues like lactose intolerance, that sort of thing, it very well could be because our typical Jersey cows produce an A1 protein, which promotes a lot of discomfort and yuckiness in our gut. Whereas the European cows that produce only the A2 protein, that does not have the same effect. And so generally, if you are lactose intolerant, if you switch to A2 products, milk, butter, cheeses, sometimes it's kind of hard to find, but because it's becoming more and more known, these products are actually easier to find now. Well, I used an A2 grass fed. All the cows are grass fed and or they stay out on pastures. They're not grain fed. And I used that heavy cream, reduced it quite a bit, and then I used monk fruit to sweeten it. So I could create my own sweetened condensed milk, but not sweetened with sugar. Did you know that one of those, what is it, a 12-ounce can? I think that's a typical 12-ounce can of sweetened condensed milk has a full cup worth of sugar in it. I didn't know that until I started doing this. It's like, wow, that's a lot of sugar. So I made my own and I used monk fruit instead of sugar. And wow, it was very sweet, even though the rest of the stuff that I put in was dark chocolate. Baker's chocolate to start with, but in my typical fudge recipe, I would use some baker's chocolate, so unsweetened, absolute, just 100% cacao, however you say it, cocoa. Um, but then I would use milk chocolate chips. And it was a really great blend to create what I like as like the perfect fudge. Jimmy, however, he likes dark chocolate anyway. And so we used 72% dark chocolate chips and that baker's chocolate. And it came out really good just by switching it up and using monk fruit instead of actual sugar. So I have two huge success stories, especially about on taste and even texture. I kind of had to mess with things a little bit. And I also made another round of the sugar cookies, but this time I used almond flour to reduce any glycemic hit because the flour, even though I got Italian flour, so it's not GMO, it's still flour, and that still produces a glycemic hit. So I did do a round with the monk fruit and almond flour. So those cookies have zero glycemic hit. And they came out pretty good. Texture wise, it's a little bit more soft than the regular, what would be considered more like a shortbread. But they still taste really good. And it's not like they had a bad texture. It's just different, just a little bit different. So the cool thing is that we've had a real test. And Jim's feet have been kind of flaring up because there's just so much holiday stuff going on, and it's been hard since Thanksgiving to get things to come back down. But even just last night, he had, excuse me, he had oh, a good half a dozen of those cookies, the almond ones, the almond flour ones, and a little bit of fudge. And he had no glycemic hit. This morning, when he got up, he told me he was able to walk without pain. He didn't get that intense, like, ooh, that he typically does with eating sweet stuff. And so that was a huge, huge thing to see. That was a really great result to see. So now I know for sure I have some really good treats that we can have. And I tend to like to stick with this stuff too because I know I don't need the sugar hit either, even though it doesn't affect me the same way, to my knowledge, as it does Jimmy, but it is affecting me somehow, and that's not good. I know it's taking a toll in some way, shape, or form. Our bodies just don't need this kind of sugar, and it's everywhere. It's just so everywhere. I mean, I can tell you this, if you want to start working on it even before January 1st, I'm not gonna say to, don't have your holiday treats. That's kind of absurd. Although, you could do what I just did and reconfigure using monk fruit instead of sugar and almond flour instead of flour. There are other flours too. I just happen to use that one. Haven't used the other ones yet for those cookies, so I don't know. Can't speak to it, but almond flour worked. You can do those things, but here's something you really can do today to start making a great change, and that is stop drinking sweetened drinks. No more crap soda with a whole bunch of sugar, and don't drink the diet stuff either. That's even worse. All the chemicals. Drink water. Salted water, actually, is what our bodies really need to replenish minerals and things. These are some of the things that I've done. And actually, I did that years and years ago. And that helped me just by dropping the sugary stuff of drinking beverages and replacing it with water. It helped me, it set me on the path for when I lost 40 pounds. So, believe it or not, yeah, I had to lose 40 pounds. And I was, well, I'll just say I was 40 pounds overweight and I lost it. So, that is a quick trick you can do even starting today if you want. It's all up to you. Now, what is this monk fruit stuff? Because, like, I had never even heard of it until literally a couple months ago. And then I used it for Thanksgiving for the pies. So, let me pull up some stuff here just to give you a quick rundown of what monk fruit actually is. And it comes from the name monk fruit because it was monks who actually tended to this fruit. And it's just really interesting. It's the Buddhist monks, and they valued it for longevity and health. Well, yeah, because you can have sweet stuff, and as a matter of fact, is way sweeter than sugar, but it has no calories and no glucose hit. Zero, which is amazing. It's like crazy to think that here we have had this thing for, I believe, centuries, and yet I never even heard of such a thing until very recently. But boy, does it work. So you can have sweetened stuff. So I was just talking about sweetened beverages. What about sweet tea? There's a liquid form. You could just drop 1 or 2 drops of liquid monk fruit into your tea, and you would have very sweet tea without the glycemic hit. Anywhere that you use any kind of sweeteners, and you definitely don't want any of the sweeteners that are just really chemically based, That's not a good way to try to replace the sugar because there then you have a whole nother host of things to deal with. But this is completely natural. It's sweeter than sugar, actually. It it bakes easily. Like the use of it is very simple, and the taste is amazing without the glycemic hit. So let me tell you, I am now a humongous fan of monk fruit. I just can't even emphasize the greatness of this stuff. It's a very odd looking fruit, as you can see in these pictures, but I'll tell you what, it certainly works. I highly recommend. I got my monk fruit at our local family owned store here in Temecula, Organic Roots, which is a family operated store, which I love. But you can get it at pretty much any health food or like Sprouts, that kind of thing. Or you can even get it on Amazon. And I highly, highly recommend. I was just so pleased to see that I could now make fun, yummy, sweet treats that Jim can actually have and not feel guilty for having this stuff around and he can't have it. Because the rest of us typically can. We're not suffering from uh, rheumatoid arthritis or neuropathy, the things that he's been dealing with for the past 5 years. I am not feeling that in my body. My kids aren't feeling those kinds of things. I don't feel any symptoms at all of any ill health. However, I know now from what I've gone through with Jim and what he's going through, stuff can lurk for a long time before it finally comes out recognizable. So it's like the body just keeps putting up with it and is like trying so hard to figure out how to survive and how to make this work and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, bam, you get served with papers, divorce papers, that is. And your body says, I've had enough. Well, it took a long time for that to end up happening with Jim. And he thought he was eating healthy foods. And I'll let him explain. I am going to interview him, which will be really fun. But that way he can explain exactly how he was eating and all of that, because it was what you would think of as a healthy diet, but it wasn't. And it was wreaking havoc very quietly. And then all of a sudden, bam, he gets hit. And it was not good. But those divorce papers come in those forms: neuropathy, rheumatoid arthritis, MS, lupus, cancer, heart disease, all and a plethora of others. Those are just the easy ones that come to mind. All of this stuff, these chronic diseases, have to do with metabolic syndrome and what that's doing in our bodies. And what is the factor, the pretty recognizable factor of metabolic syndrome? The fact that your metabolism isn't functioning correctly and you start having way too much insulin in your system, diabetes, it's sugar. Straight up sugar. Because everything has a ton of sugar in it now. Ever since the government endorsed pyramid, talk about a pyramid scheme. That's the pyramid scheme, telling us that we should eat many more grains and carbs and all of this and a tiny bit of protein and fat, when it's exactly the opposite of what we should be doing. That's a pyramid scheme. and it's been in full force for a really long time. And now we have an epidemic of these diseases, and they can be linked back to metabolic syndrome. And that's because of too much sugar. So I am on a mission to speak about this as much as possible Because why? Why go through all of that? And I have to wonder about my mom and what prompted her cancer. There were no female cancers in her family line. And here she ended up with breast cancer. I have some theories on that. That'll be in a whole nother story, but that does kind of make me wonder. So, if you are contemplating your health, I know probably not right now. We're probably ignoring it right now because it is the holidays. So it's like, I don't wanna deal with that right now. I just want to have fun. And I get that totally. But you still can have fun. You can have your cake and eat it too if you use monk fruit. I'm serious. I am so happy with the outcome of this product, and I just can't believe it seems to have been hidden for so long. At least to me, I don't know, maybe everybody else knew about monk fruit except for me. It's possible. But it's also even more possible that it's being rather hidden so that we don't use sugar or so that we continue to use sugar, because we try other, like stevia. I've tried stevia, but it does have kind of a aftertaste. It's kind of just off. Some people have that reaction, others don't. And if you don't, fine, continue using stevia. That's okay. But I found that with the monk fruit, there was no weird aftertaste, and it was very sweet, very easy to work with. And so, super happy. That's my report, if you will, since I've been playing around with this stuff and I've been talking about it. I just wanted you to know you have some options, which is super cool. So, anyway, check out my ebook again. Know someone who could really use some help with some of these issues that I discuss in the ebook. So, take a look and let me know what you think because I definitely want feedback. I'd love to hear from you. I would love to hear if you yourself have also used monk fruit and uh, your experience with it. That would be fun. Maybe we could share some recipes. So please comment and check out the ebook. And I won't be on live next week because it is Christmas Eve and there's just far too many things going on. I know everyone's crazy busy, especially on Christmas Eve. So we just won't even attempt that. But the week following, we'll be back. Anyway, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and I'll see you again soon.